Hello there viewers, and welcome to another edition of Formula 1 Talk, in which we will go over the talking points and things that happened at the Canadian Grand Prix that took place on Sunday at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And to begin with, there were a couple of grid penalties that were added for a couple of drivers. The first of these was obviously Romain Grosjean, who took a 10-place grid drop for his actions at Monaco, where he crashed into the back of Daniel Ricciardo, I do believe it was. And also Kimi Raikkonen and Daniel Ricciardo himself both took 2-place grid drops for lining up for the second start of qualifying 2, where there was about 1 minute 58 seconds to go, where they lined up 3 abreast, and you're supposed to line up in single file. However, the big revelation of qualifying was that Williams' Valtteri Bottas was able to qualify in 3rd position due to the changing track circumstances and his high setup of downforce that he had on the car. Unfortunately, though, at the start of the race, this led to Bottas basically being passed by the main contenders for the race win and, of course, the championship. But as we now get on to the start of the race, Sebastian Vettel had basically won this race within the end of the first couple of corners. And it was a very dominating victory, and it sort of spoils the rest of the video, I know, but Vettel had won this race within a lap or two. He was that dominant. It led to memories of his victories in 2011, where the Red Bull was absolutely the best car to have. Force India's 100th Grand Prix weekend didn't start off tremendously well, as the Scotsman Paul di Resta was unable to get even into qualifying 2, citing problems with pit lane management of the qualifying sessions, and just not being the best of times for di Resta in his relationship with Force India, although reading this morning just before recording this that everything is now hunky-dory, so to speak. I think di Resta may well be looking forward to a move away from Force India and away to a team that can actually produce a decent enough car for him to get into qualifying 2 and qualifying 2, qualifying 3. On a more consistent and a more regular basis. Unfortunately, at the moment, that team is not McLaren. Big problems, and I mean very big problems at McLaren at the moment. They just cannot get things working the way that they have been able to get them working when Lewis Hamilton was there. I think losing Hamilton is a huge blow. I think that Lewis would have been able to sort of drag this car into Q2, Q3, but the car really is bad because they didn't take an evolutionary step with the car design. It's something that they have to sort out, and it's going to take a very long time. Finally Jenson Button is team leader of one of the big teams in Formula 1, and it's got to be a complete nightmare for Jenson. He signed with McLaren as the world champion when he signed, and he cannot get any luck at the moment. They qualified in 12th. He qualified in 14th, Perez qualified in 12th, or something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous for a team that is that well funded. It's that well got its history in the sport. It's just absolutely pathetic, but we'll see what happens there. By the end of, say, lap 4 or 5, a lot of drivers were on the radio, because you see it come up on the screen, a lot of drivers saying that they had problems with their brakes, and a lot of pit wall conversations to the drivers, pit communications over the radio, were saying, adjust your brake bias, your front brakes are too hot, miles too hot, and the majority of drivers were complaining of this, including Raikkonen, Rosberg. I think the two McLarens had a few problems as well. But unfortunately, this was not the Canada we once knew. This wasn't a Canada that we saw in 2000 and, well, even last year. It was a better race than this one. I'm not saying it was as bad as Monaco, because nothing is as bad as Monaco. Even Singapore's got better overtaking manoeuvres and better manoeuvres at specific racing than Monaco has. But at least we were getting some passing, specifically from Ferrari's Felipe Massa, who crashed out in qualifying and started way down the field. He was cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter, and quite frankly, it was up to him and Paul di Resta, who were, scything through the field. Drive-through penalty for a Williams of Pastor Maldonado after hitting Sutil on lap 2. Bit embarrassing, because we all thought that Maldonado had moved on from these silly incidents that he's been part of in the last couple of seasons since his entry into the sport, although he seems to be a lot more conservative now than he used to be. Mark Webber, I thought, hit Guido van der Garde when he was lapping him early on in the race. The judges, actually race stewards should I say, actually penalised van der Garde for that. He lost part of his front wing, and the front wing actually came off before he got back to the pits, and he was basically dragging it around the track, where I actually thought at that time it was going to produce a safety car. Luckily it didn't, and it was very sameish. We were getting the odd pass with DRS, and the two zones, the one quite long one and the short one down the start-finish straight/curve, because I don't think the start-finish line goes over a straight, it goes over a longish curve, and they used DRS there to the first turn, which is where Fernando Alonso was making his passes, and he had moved up to 4th place behind Mark Webber and Lewis Hamilton, who was doing everything he possibly could to stay with Vettel, but as I said near the start of the video, Vettel was just streaking off into the distance, very reminiscent of his 2011 victories and his season that time around. But nothing really much was happening. Alonso managed to get past Webber, and basically it was a race of not much incident. Paul di Resta had fantastic tyre management. He started on the medium compound tyre, which was the harder of the two compounds used by Pirelli this time around, and he produced, as a result of all of this, because a lot of drivers were getting the graining phase within 10-15 laps, but once they got through the graining phase, the tyres were really working well and staying with the drivers, giving them a heck of a lot of grip. And Paul di Resta managed to do 57 laps on the one set of tyres, and it was only a 70-lap race. So he went on to the super softs, which were the option tyre, and it was a really good stint. It gave him 6th or 7th place, I think, in the race. A much improved driver and team this year are the Toro Rosso combination of Daniel Ricciardo and, of course, the most improved driver in Formula 1 in my opinion at the moment, and that is Jean-Eric Vergne of France. He's just consistently putting in the decent performances. He's getting 6th, 7th, 8th place finishes. Really performing well, performing above standard, and I think that if Red Bull don't re-sign Mark Webber for 2014, and they don't sign Kimi Raikkonen for 2014. Lots of stories about Raikkonen this weekend, saying that he should be looking to move on if he wants to be world champion again. The Lotus car isn't doing particularly brilliant at the moment, and to be honest, that is true, and that was very true this weekend. Kimi Raikkonen just wasn't on the pace all weekend. It was as if the car was unwilling. And we all know that machines can not work as they should do some of the time. But you have to say that Lotus falling back a little bit as a result of this weekend. Raikkonen was 2nd in the championship at the start of the weekend. He finished out as 3rd in the championship behind Alonso. but more on that in a few moments' time. Drive through for Adrian Sutil, who was ignoring blue flags ahead of Hamilton and Alonso, who were battling for position at that time. Hamilton, the Mercedes is not as good as the Ferrari in race trim. The Mercedes, I think, is the best qualifying car out there. They got the best single lap pace or best low fuel pace of them all, but when you put a full tank of fuel in that car, it doesn't work half as well. But Alonso managed to get past him in the last, say, 12 laps or so, and I reckon it was mainly due. I mean, he was going to get him anyway with DRS, was Fernando, but Sutil, you're allowed to pass 2 blue flags, and then you must pass before the third one or straight away after the third one. He didn't, which led Fernando to catch Lewis maybe a lap or 2 earlier than he would have done without the hold-ups. Felipe Massa passed Kimi Raikkonen in virtually the same place. The Ferraris were passing cars at the end of the second DRS zone, or the first corner of the track, and that was that. An absolutely dominating performance by Sebastian Vettel. He finished first, and you just got to say it was like watching Vettel of old. I may not like what Vettel did earlier on in the season to Mark Webber and Red Bull, scuffing the team orders, saying, I don't want to be second best, I have a number 1 on my car. If you want my thoughts on the situation, you can watch my Mark Webber / team orders special that I posted up about 2 months ago now. Take a look at that. I'll post a link in the description for that particular video. Take a look at my channel, see what goes on about that particular video. But Vettel today, Sebastian was absolutely flawless in this particular race. He hit the side of the wall with the side of the tyre, a little bit of an edgy moment, and he went across the grass. But apart from that, he was the man today, and he was never going to be beaten. Not even Senna at his Monaco best would have beaten Vettel, and that's saying something. The car was hooked up around the circuit, had the best downforce, but not the best straight line speed. That actually went, I do believe, to Nico Hülkenberg of Sauber. So we'll see. But that's what Red Bull tend to do. They tend to give the drivers of their cars the best possible chance at winning the race and not the best straight line speed. In fact, Red Bull have got, I do believe, the worst or second worst straight line speed, but what they lack up in speed in straights, they certainly make up for in downforce with Adrian Newey's genius car design. Now on to the race results, and first, obviously, with a dominating win, was Sebastian Vettel. Second, Fernando Alonso, managing to pass Hamilton in the last, say, 10 laps or so. Hamilton obviously third. Mark Webber fourth, doing what he basically could do. He's number 2 driver for Red Bull, but he's nowhere near the talent of Vettel, and basically nowhere near the talent that he should have with this car, to be brutally honest with you. This is Nico Rosberg. I think Hamilton is finally edging Rosberg out. Rosberg's doing well with the qualifying times, but I sincerely believe that Lewis is the better driver. He of course naturally is the better driver, being a former world champion, but I thought Rosberg was beginning to move up with his victory in Monaco, doing well throughout the season as well. Jean-Eric Vergne in 6th, fantastic race, he just keeps improving all the time. Brilliant race for Paul di Resta in 7th, 57 laps as I say, just doing absolutely fantastic there. A brilliant stint. And in 8th place was Felipe Massa with Ferrari. Not bad considering he started round 19th, something like that. 9th place for Kimi Raikkonen, not doing at all well lately, just didn't have the car under him in this particular race. And 10th was Adrian Sutil, who did relatively well considering that he was hit by Maldonado on that too. On to the Drivers' Championship now. First of is Sebastian Vettel on 132. Beginning to work out a lead now over new second place man Fernando Alonso. He's on 96. Raikkonen down to third, he's on 88. Hamilton fourth, 77. Webber fifth on 69. Rosberg sixth on 57. Massa seventh on 49. De Resta eighth on 34. Ninth is Grosjean on 26. And Jenson Button 10th on 25. Now on to the Constructors' Championship. First Red Bull on 201, second Ferrari on 145, Mercedes third on 134, Lotus fourth on 114, fifth is Force India on 51, sixth McLaren on 37, Toro Rosso seventh on 20, Sauber eighth on 5, and the other teams with Williams, Marussia and Caterham are yet to score. So what conclusions can we draw from this race? The first one is Vettel was absolutely dominant. Secondly, the next thing we have to conclude is that McLaren are in danger of being overtaken in the Constructors' Championship by Toro Rosso, a much less funded team, even though they do have the backing of the Red Bull drinks empire. Thirdly, you have to wonder if McLaren can actually pull the rabbit out of the hat and wring the neck of the car and try and get some performance out of it. We've got 3 weeks now until the next Grand Prix. Another thing we have to look at is the race pace of the Mercedes compared to their rivals. They are getting quicker, and once Lewis gets his eye in with the team, I think he may well get a couple of victories. Will those victories come in the first half of the season before Hungary? I don't know. He would love to win, obviously, next time out in Silverstone, as would many of the drivers. And one extra point of note, that was McLaren's first race without points for some 60 plus races, and it just demonstrates how far behind they are technology wise and pace wise compared to everybody else. Their main rivals obviously McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Lotus, and they're being slowly but surely caught by the Toro Rossos of Ricciardo and Jean-Eric Vergne. Unfortunately, during the race, the Sauber of Esteban Gutierrez was coming out of the pits and slid off and crashed into the tyre barrier after the first corner, or the first couple of corners. This resulted in double wave yellow flags being waved. I thought this was going to bring out a safety car. The unfortunate accident occurred when a crane driver went out and was ready to pick up Gutierrez's Sauber, take it back to the pits. And one of the marshals who was on the scene actually fell over while this was going on, fell underneath the eye line of the crane driver, and sadly died after the crane drove over him. And it's the first death of a marshal in Formula 1 since the horrific accident with Ralf Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve at the 2001 Australian Grand Prix. Tremendously tragic accident, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the marshal's family. Devastating accident, and hopefully Formula 1 will continue to strive towards safety for everyone involved to allow the drivers to go racing. I will say now that alright, it's not much of a help to his family because they won't be watching this video, but I'd like to dedicate this particular episode of Formula 1 Talk to the memory of that marshal, and let's just hope that this unfortunate incident or anything like this unfortunate incident doesn't happen again. So that's my own personal tribute to the race marshal who paid with his life for a sport that he obviously loves, and he obviously loved and I love absolutely dearly. It's a reason that I produce these videos. I don't do these videos for profit. I don't do these videos, to gain anything from them. Of course, I would like a few more subscribers. I'd like 10,000 views per video, but I know for a fact at the moment that's not going to happen. But I feel sorry for his family, quite obviously. I feel sorry for the sport. It didn't need publicity like this. We're in a time where any publicity is going to be scrutinised. You're going to see maybe protests before the next Grand Prix at Silverstone. However, it takes an event like this, unfortunately, for safety procedures to be even more rigorously tuned. It's unfortunate that this has happened, and it takes an event like this for it not to happen again. When you do something at home and you think, I shouldn't have done that, and you never do it again, but it's taken a fatality to bring that point forward. And let's hope that safety precautions are tightened up, maybe extreme high-vis jackets or something like that, that you can see everything when you're driving a crane or a lorry or a truck or whatever in the sport of marshalling. I mean, it's obviously not just Formula One. These safety marshals are all over the place in motorsport, and let's just hope something like this doesn't happen again. So I apologise for ending the video on a sad note, but I just had to bring out the news. As of recording, the race marshal has yet to be identified. I mean, obviously he will be by his family, but a tragic end mars a fairly decent race. We had wheel-to-wheel racing basically over the whole Grand Prix, and we will just see what happens in the future. But as for this edition of Formula One Talk, thanks for watching.